And good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to A Gathering Place brought to you by the Gullah Geechee Chamber of Commerce. And today's show is sponsored by the United States Energy Foundation because we're talking the environment and energy, which is so very important to what's going on in the Gullah Geechee community and beyond our greater community. And we have a special guest with us from Green America. We're going to be talking environmental justice and economic justice, tying in climate change and the environment to the market place. And just a fascinating conversation that I'm looking forward to. And we'll start it right after our opening.
Hello, I'm Marilyn Hemingway, and welcome to A Gathering Place. I said, I'm stepping back because we have young voices who want to be heard and they're moving on something.
Branding is really important to you and your business.
Even a basic type of technology, you learn it all.
And people are
Good question.
And we're back. All right, folks, let's go ahead and get started. And we're going to welcome Alisa Gravitz with Green America. We're so excited to have you with us today.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. One of the big highlights was for about a month ago, Marilyn, you and I got a chance to chat a little bit. And I felt like I had met a kindred spirit. So I am so glad that we get this chance to chat again, because it seems like our passion areas are very much in the same place, both heart and mind.
We had a really good conversation. I was excited to meet you and your staff and learn about Green America. And you're right. I think we do have a lot of alignment in our visions. As I was telling you, environmental justice is vital to the economic justice mission that we are pushing. That's why I started the Gullah Geechee Chamber of Commerce. One of the reasons why. So I tell folks from day one, our advocacy has been the environment and green renewable energy. The environment, because without environmental justice, without a healthy environment, we can't have healthy homes. We can't have healthy businesses. We can't have healthy communities. The green renewable energy, because we see the future, career and business opportunities. So when I am hearing about your mission, and that emphasis on the marketplace, I'm like, that's right up our alley.
Here. Yeah. For sure. I mean, and that's, I kind of feel like our missions are so tied. Our mission at Green America is to use our economic power on behalf of people on the planet. So on behalf of social justice and economic justice. And like you say, it takes at least 3 legs to hold up the table or a chair or a stool. And the economic health, the planetary health, the personal health is all part of that holding our families and our communities up. And I'll tell you, with the work that we do at Green America, we see that literally from the kitchen to the corporation. So, the choices you make in your kitchen about environmental health and the foods, and where you choose to buy your food, supporting local farmers, for example, creating your own garden, for example, all of that is both economic health, planetary health, and justice, right there, starting with your kitchen. Then you go all the way up to the corporation. What are the corporations are doing? Because we spend a lot of time standing up to corporate abuses on environmental health, environmental justice, and economic justice. So whether it's, who's on your board, you need to have representation on your board. It needs to look like America. You need to have women, you need to have people of color, you need to have indigenous people, you need to have community people. Who's on that board? And one of the things we find is that a company who is harming the environment is also a company that's got economic injustice in its corporate world. And over, like when people report to us, we're seeing this wrongdoing on a company. We'll get a report about a company, about an environmental wrongdoing, and then we'll get a report about a justice wrongdoing about the same company. So from your kitchen to the corporation, those principles that you have, Marilyn, are like exactly what we have to be looking for, and what we want to bring up, the things that create environmental health, environmental justice, and community health. And we want to bring down those forces that are working against that.
That's right. That's right. I agree with you on that. Let's start at the beginning. I love what you just said. How do we make this happen? What's Green America doing to help communities such as my community, the Gallagher, descendants of enslaved Africans brought here, and we were brought here because of our knowledge of how to control water and manage the land. And I tell people we've been environmentalists from day one. We just don't use that terminology. But how do you engage marginalized frontline communities such as mine? And then as an individual, I love the kitchen analogy. I love the kitchen example. But what more has individuals can do to connect with Green America? Get these things started.
Oh my goodness. What a great question. And what I love about that question is it shows all the levels where we can work. Mm-hmm. It starts with each of us, in our own lives, looking into our own hearts and in our own families. The next level is the community, that community health. And then it's the world. How do we have impact on the world? Now, the good news is that the choices you make in your own life do in fact have the impact on the community, and do in fact have a good impact on the rest of the world. And I know that we've all experienced that. And Marilyn, some of the work that you told me about that you're doing in the community here in terms of engaging youth, and in terms of really helping people understand this connection between environmental justice and social justice, that is an example of, right there, you're hitting all three levels, because it's about the individual, it's about the community, and it's about the collective impact we all have on the whole world. So that's one of the reasons I felt so connected to what you do. And so, and the other thing to think about is where we each have different gifts, right? And we each have different things that we love to do. So, and that we're good at. So, some people are really great at, their focus is really on caring for their family and making sure that there's that environmental health, that justice, and that economic health in the family. That's really important, because all those choices add up to the big picture. There are some people that are really good at organizing in the community, and they want to organize it not for the great things like a community garden, and they want to organize against things that are not great. Like, maybe there's a proposal for some company to come in and they're gonna harm the water. So you work against that happening. And some people are, they're ready to take on the whole world. And it's kind of like, what I just want to say is you sort of said it too, whatever those gifts are. And like in the example you just gave, the gifts that go all the way back in your community, all the way back to Africa, where the wisdom in your ancestors was all about the water, was all about the food, and that's what kind of if you think at the bottom of green, what does it mean to be green? Well, green is green for us is defined. It has to be people on the planet. It has to be environmental justice and economic justice. So that's kind of where we start. and we ask what do you want to do? Where do you want to work? So like on the kitchen example, if you make sure that there's no toxic chemicals in your kitchen, well, what are you doing? You're protecting your family. What else are you doing? You are making sure that the companies who sell toxic chemicals do not get one of your dollars. So that is changing the economy. Flip side is, you decide you want to buy, again, you want to grow your own garden, you want to buy local food. What are you doing? You're supporting your community. You're bringing healthy food into your family. If you buy seeds, and the seeds are, for example, maybe the seeds are local or the seeds are organic, you're supporting those local businesses, those companies that are aligned with you and the kind of future you want to bring. Because, each one of us works hard for our money. And every time you spend that dollar, you are literally voting for the future. And the more that you can vote for the community and the companies that are that share your vision and values, the more we get a better future. So that's how it all starts, from the decisions we make in our homes. And one of the things I love about what you do, Marilyn, is you help people think about those decisions.
As I was listening to you, and I'm the one that's a little echoey. Yeah, I'm apologizing. So I'm going to try to do a little bit talking as I can. But I'm going to throw these questions out. What I hear is you have to be very intentional and deliberate and strategic. And intentional is making decisions that I'm going to spend my money locally. And not just locally, but maybe even going as far as an organic local farmer. Or something that handcrafted that uses local goods. That's very intentional and deliberate with your choice of where you're going to spend your money. Strategic is thinking long term. What is not only my individual impact, but also how can I influence corporations? How can I impact corporations? And that may take withholding my money from corporations that harm the environment. That means also harming my family, harming me as an individual. And I hear that as you speak. Yeah, and I also hit the movement towards that dollar. How important it is think about where we're spending that dollar. Is that marketplace, that economic tie-in? And I want people to really kind of understand that, because often we hear marketplace and environment comes from the point of view of corporations controlling the narrative. They want us to believe one thing while doing another. Can we talk about that more from the Green America perspective? I really want people to understand when you talk about economic justice, social justice, environmental justice, especially
how that all comes together.
Capitalistic. How does that all fit together?
That is really, let me give you an example of that. So one place where it all comes together is Amazon. What is Amazon doing to our communities, right? So, and it ties right into what you were saying, Marilyn, about local. I mean, it's kind of easy to go online and push the button for Amazon, but maybe whatever you're looking for, you could buy locally. Maybe you could buy it from a retailer locally, because then you're keeping that money in the community. And what are they doing? They're hiring our kids in the community, right? So maybe they have an after-school job. When you think about that's Amazon is a good example. And Amazon is also an example of a company where, one of those companies I mentioned earlier, where there's environmental wrongdoing, there's worker wrongdoing, there's all kinds of economic injustice going on. So here's an example, but it's also an example of even we can work together and even get these big companies to move. So with Amazon, one of the things, when you think about Amazon, they are one of the biggest energy users in this economy. And that's because obviously they're delivering packages and all of that, which people can figure out right away. But many people don't know that Amazon, a lot of their money comes from something called Amazon Web Services. So they run these big servers that run the internet. And basically, if you've used the internet today, you've used Amazon Web Services. Well, so there's your point about the energy. As one of the biggest energy users in this economy, how do we make sure that that energy is coming from renewable sources? Well, all of us at Green America, all of our members, work together to say, Amazon, clean up the cloud, because, you know, the web, they call the, you know, all those cloud services when you run these big server farms, right? So it took many years, but, you know, 5, 6, 8 years. I could tell you lots of stories from behind the scenes, but to get to the point, Amazon finally said, yes, you're right. We use a lot of energy. We have an obligation to make it renewable. They then did what companies are really good at doing, which is once they agree to do something, they're good at putting into a plan. And they actually have a plan that by 2030, they're going to be running their entire system on renewable energy. So clean energy, we all work together. Then we said, well, Amazon, that's very interesting. That's necessary, but not sufficient. Who are getting those clean energy jobs? Okay. We want to make sure that those clean energy jobs are in communities where that everybody in the community has access to those jobs. We want to make sure that frontline communities are getting those clean energy jobs. You're the one that's contracting with the renewable energy. You must work with us to demand that the energy companies find jobs for everybody in the clean energy economy. So there's an example of clean company dirty energy now moving to clean energy, and we're saying good, that's necessary but not sufficient. Let's get the economic justice piece done too. Let's make sure that those clean energy jobs go to people in frontline communities. So that's an example of just one kind of way that those three things connect. Now, of course, Amazon has some other problems. I think everybody's heard about some of the big problems and some of the economic and economic injustice in their warehouses. So we have a campaign that's pushing on that. And of course, one of the things that Amazon is doing is by concentrating more and more power, right? That means that's pushing more and more small businesses to the edge. The kinds of small businesses in the kinds of communities like your community and what you're trying to achieve. And so we say, okay, on top of that, everybody, local first. Don't push, it's easy to push the Amazon button, but local first. Make sure those purchases are coming from your community and keeping the money in your community and keeping the jobs in your community. So those are some of the kinds of ways we connect it from the community to the corporation. How do we make sure that those things happen? Is that what you were kind of getting at, Marilyn?
Yeah, that is kind of. So I have a couple other questions. You said local first.
Mm-hmm.
Does Green America have a local first program or something along those that could help, like me, a small chamber of commerce, to get the word out, to educate folks?
Right. So we do a lot of education about local first. Indeed, anytime we try to integrate, you know, these are all the problems are all interconnected. But the good news is that the solutions are all interconnected, kind of in the conversation we just had about Amazon, or the conversation we had a minute ago about, you know, from your kitchen to your community. So in all the education we do, even though, for example, we might be focused at the moment on, hey, everybody, make sure Amazon cleans up their energy and gets those jobs to frontline communities, those clean energy jobs to frontline communities, we always say, and then we always add, all right, when you're thinking about Amazon, what else? Think about local first. So we ourselves don't run a local first campaign, but we support people who do. We spread the word about people who do, and we encourage everybody. Like when we have this amazing opportunity to talk with you, we say, you know what? Local first is part of the solution, and it's part of what you can do. You know, I loved how you said it a minute ago, Marilyn, about being intentional. And how do once you set that intention, then that opens up ideas for all the different ways you can, again, use the power of your money, your hard-earned money, to make the world that you want. And thank you. That's so sweet that your colleagues are putting up some of our website. Here's a link that people might like too. It's about the kitchen. And another thing that we just love is we really encourage people, oh, you see it there, to grow gardens. Because talk about local, that's hyper-local. That's in your backyard. Or in some cases, in your front yard. Doesn't have to be in the backyard. So one of the things that we do is we encourage gardening. We have a lot of really great, if you've never gardened before, we have a lot of how do you get started. We also encourage people to use, again, human health, community health. So the human health is about growing your own garden. Supporting your local community is about growing your own garden. And the choices you make in your garden to protect the environment. And so we have something called Climate Victory Gardens to encourage people to go back to the wisdom of your ancestors, Marilyn, and basically use those techniques in growing your garden. And I think people might love this link here, because that links into all of our gardening resources. And it starts out with this great video that Rosaria Dawson and Ron Finley did for us on about how your own garden connects to this effort to really help with the environment and climate. So I think when I need a little thing to make me happy, I always look at that video again, because it just really yeah, this is what we're all doing and this is what we can do.
So I'm scrolling those links at the bottom of the screen, and I'll do it throughout the show.
Oh, that's so nice.
I'm glad you mentioned. I have a garden in my backyard. This year, I added it to my front yard. 2 raised beds. The sun is better in the front yard. The more I learn, as they say, the know you more. When you know better, you do better.
Yeah.
And I realize grass is probably not the best thing. In the way that we do grass with fertilizer and the cutting and stuff. So I said I'm going to take my front yard and convert it to a garden, and that's what I'm doing. I have 2 raised beds now in my front yard, and I'm telling you, yeah, it's a huge difference in how everything is growing. It really is.
Right.
It really is.
Oh, it's huge, and we invite everyone. If you would like to, you can put your garden on the map. We have this big map, and you can add your garden, and you can see the people that's another way to see how it all adds up. That people all over the company, all over the country are doing this, and it's their home gardens. Sometimes it's a school garden, sometimes it's a church garden, sometimes it's a community garden. People are talk about community well-being and health. People are starting gardens in communities that don't have much access to fresh fruits and vegetables. I mean, this is amazing. Again, we welcome people to use the resources and to say, yes, I'm doing it, and put your garden on the map and see how all together we're making this huge difference. So it's just there is, I'm not even going to go into it because everybody knows all the bad news out there. I'm not even going to discuss the specifics because, oh man.
Yeah.
But the good news is when we come together and we set these intentions and we do this work in our own lives and in our communities, we can make a huge difference.
We certainly can. So I'm glad we're talking about gardening. Let's talk about some other things we can do economic wise. I'm just fascinated by it. So when I learned more about Green America, I'm thinking, wow, I can relate to this because I've been connecting the environment with the environment, in particular with the Gullah Geechee, my community. The culture is based on that our ancestors were brought here because of their knowledge of how to control the water, manage the land. And they had to have healthy water and healthy land to not only grow the rice and the sugar, the indigo and sea island cotton, but the food, they were only given certain types of food in very small amounts. So to get nutrients, they had to grow out in the wood, in the bush arbor. their nutrients, to supplement their diet. It was always about, I have to take care of this land because this is where I'm growing my nutrients. I go to the sea because I don't eat the beef, the chickens, but the sea is plentiful. I go to the sea, I go to the ocean, and I have to take care of that to provide any sustenance. So my ancestor roots, that's what it's about. When I started the chamber, I had to make that connection. That our culture is what's going to save us. And when I look at climate change, and I look at the indigenous traditions and practices, that also is what's going to save us. And when I say us, it's not in terms of just my community, but the broader global, all of us. And you're hearing that in the last 2-3 years, more and more, we've got to listen to the indigenous people. We've got to look at their practices that have worked.
That's right.
And how do we incorporate them in a broader scale? Does that make sense? That makes sense what I'm saying?
At 100%. It's that ancient wisdom that is going to, that old good with the new good is going to create the greater good. That, we take that ancient wisdom and we apply it to our world now, and that way we can scale it. So absolutely yes. And again, it starts with the intentions we all set and what we do to make sure that ourselves and our families are healthy. And then it goes from there. And I'm really happy to report that these ideas, this idea about what you're saying, Marilyn, it just makes my heart happy, and it also brings a little bit of a tear to my eye, because people are just now, learning this from people who are still in touch with their ancestors. And so what's happening right now is that in farm country, in this country, there is now a whole new generation talking about soil health. How do we create soil health? And Marilyn, if you were in on these conversations, you would go, oh my gosh, they're having to rediscover what my people already know. That's what you would say, right? And you know what else they're rediscovering? They're rediscovering exactly what we were just saying, that when you have healthy soil and you're taking care of that soil and you're not putting chemicals on it, you know what you get? You get healthier plants. The nutrition density is really amazing. And so sometimes when I say, the ancient wisdom with what we're learning now is there are people who are actually right now inventing little apps where we could actually measure and actually see that nutrient density, so that, as our soils get better, you can use these little apps to see how much this carrot is more nutrient dense than, the one that's coming in plastic at the grocery store or something. And it's just, we're that way we can start seeing what we're doing. And so there's a whole new generation who are saying, we have got to listen to this ancient wisdom. We've got to get ourselves off the they call it the degenerate, the path of degeneration that our farming system is on. And we have to go to regeneration. And you know what? We got a lot of work to do, because some of that soil is badly degenerated. But that's where, again, that ancient wisdom is now, people are now recognizing, oh, we drove in the wrong direction for a lot of years. We gotta come back.
Well, the hopeful thing about it, I can tell you this. There are so many people, not just in my community, but other local communities that I'm aware of that are going back to the land in the sense of gardens in the yard, community garden. And then just yesterday, I posted a focus group for the Delegacy Seafood Trade, because we're doing a food this year. Here, one of our grants, we're doing data gathering, content, which includes focus groups and individual interviews.
Wow!
But what came up in the focus group was the poor man's crabber. crab harvesting. And it was a method with their feet to stir the crab up in the plush mud. And he made a point. It was a first. He could get 50 crabs in 10 minutes. But that was for sustenance, not for commercial use.
Right.
But to feed their family. And we were so fascinated about it because we're like, less impact on the community, on the globe, on the earth, because it wasn't about we're doing this method to sell, which would mean more impact on the community, on the climate, on the earth,
right.
The sustenance of the family. So in these conversations that people are having more and more of, going back to those indigenous practices, and sustenance is the key word.
Sustenance, resilience. And what I love about that story is that's a great example of, you know what else is happening? Sustenance is happening. That family isn't going to the store to buy crabs in plastic that got shipped from who knows how long using who knows how much gas. There's no, they call it food miles. The food miles and the average, on your plate, the average thing that you buy at a store has traveled 1,500 miles using all that gas and creating all that greenhouse gases, right? So by focusing on sustenance and making the food miles go to zero, the family is being fed, and that family is also contributing to eliminating greenhouse gases.
Exactly. I love this conversation because now it's making us think about those daily things we can do. We can be part of the solution. I didn't think about, and I'm fortunate that I literally live across the street from the grocery store. It's a 2-minute walk. Nice neighborhood, trees. So I don't necessarily see the grocery store, but I can walk out of the neighborhood
to get it. Right.
Then think about in terms of food now.
Right.
Which leads me to think about food where people are forced to go out of their community. We're adding to food. So it's not only just we're feeding this community. You can't separate that community from your neighborhood because that community is increasing food miles that you may live 50 miles away, but because the gas emissions, it's still impacting your community. So every neighbor, whether you're a neighbor that's right next door, 220, 200, 2,000 miles away, all of our actions impact all of us.
All of us. I just love the way you say that. And when you put that together, so you were asking, like you were giving the example before of that now you're making raised beds in the front of your yard. So here's another. So now here's another way to connect to community. And when you're thinking about these food deserts, I have seen some communities. I'm thinking of one that I saw in Arizona, where everybody kind of made a farm from people's front yards and backyards. So people identified all the different things that they could grow, and then they shared them with each other. By connecting all of those farms. So that's another way to make that connection between, that we talked earlier about, there's the family, the individual family level, there's the community level, and then all the way out to the world. And by taking these steps in the individual and then saying, oh, I'm really understanding and loving the fact that I'm growing this food. And it's really good because particularly like you're saying, if you're in a food desert, people don't even have access to that. And then, well, what are all the different ways we as a community can come together and grow as much food as possible? So, maybe one of these food deserts is in the middle of a city and most people are living in apartment buildings. Well, how can we work together as the apartment building to use maybe there's a courtyard or a piece of land on the side of the apartment building. How can we work, at our church, at our schools? Does the city own some land that they're doing nothing with that they're willing to let us put a garden on? And then, again, this idea of coordinating across, let's just say an example of people have garden in the front, garden in the back. Oh, you're growing tomatoes. Okay, I'm going to grow eggplant. Okay, I'm going to grow peppers. And then you can kind of share. It's like you've created a farm out of your community. Oh my goodness! And look at all these gorgeous pictures you're showing of just exactly that.
So this is a community garden in my hometown that was started by the Gullah Preservation Society. And it's by Zenobia Harper, who's a very good friend of mine. Started it 3 years ago. With the intention of bringing in the community, not only engaging them in the garden, but she doesn't charge. If you are hungry, you can go in the garden and get food. And it's based on West African traditions and foods. So she doesn't just have green okra that we all see. She has a variety of West Africa. Watermelons, a variety. Different types of beans. She's even grown rice. And I'm listening to you, and that's why I brought the pictures up, because that's what she's doing.
Yeah.
She's doing
and I can see
exactly what you described.
And I can see she's set up for integrating the food, the different plants together so that they can give support to one another.
Exactly.
Exactly. And I'm also looking at this great picture, and I'm seeing in the background like these homes that they do have front and backyards. Now, can you imagine if this neighborhood organized and they took all of the things that they were learning from Zenobia and they're saying, I'm going to bring it into my yard, and maybe this first house here, maybe they have the right sun for growing a lot of tomatoes, and maybe somebody else across the street, they have the perfect place for growing watermelons. Well, okay, we're doing some little, we're creating a little bit of community commerce here. We're gonna have enough tomatoes for everybody. We're gonna have enough watermelon for everybody, and somebody else down the street says, oh, I'm interested in growing the okra, growing the peppers. I didn't know about those different kinds of okra. I'm going to talk to Zenobia about that.
Exactly.
Exactly. I love it.
So she's putting it into practice, and we even share. And her fair share, I had an abundance of tomato plants. Gave her some. She gives me plants. I have sugarcane growing in my garden now. And it's growing. So we exchange, because you say exchange. I have a neighbor. We started in our community first a lot with the community garden. And then the next year we said, when you grow certain types of vegetables, I'll grow certain types of vegetables, and we'll trade.
Exactly.
And that actually increases the abundance.
It increases the abundance. It increases the number of people being involved. People get creative. Not only can you trade fruits and vegetables, but you can also trade seeds. So next, the most abundant plants, if you take the seeds from them next year, more people can have more seeds. They don't have to spend a dime, not even for seeds. I mean, it's amazing. I have a funny story that sounds a really fun story that sounds familiar to what Zenobia is doing. So they started a community garden, and then people started doing exactly what you said. Some people growing this, some people growing that, trading. And there was one neighbor who said, I am terrible at growing things. About the only thing I can grow around here is dandelions. That's the only thing. And people went, you can grow dandelions? Grow more dandelions, then we can add dandelion greens to our to the abundance in our neighborhood. So there's everybody can bring their gifts, their wisdom, their experience.
That's
right.
That's what great about the dandelion problem is that people don't realize dandelion. You can use the whole plant.
Exactly.
We have been miseducated. Dandelion is a weed. When you can take the whole plant and make something from dandelion tea to the tender leaves, your salad, the whole dandelion plant. Yeah,
absolutely.
You're right. There are things that now Zenobia and I talk about dollar weed. Dollar weed is so plentiful around where I live. Last year she took it, dried it, and made a spice. So this year, I'm literally in my neighborhood, getting dollar weed, dehydrating it, and I'm going to figure out if I can make this plastic. This is what our ancestors did, but we miseducated, moved away from that connection. But you got to go get everything out the grocery store, and you don't have to.
Right.
I have a comment. It's a long one, so I'm going to put it up and see if we can address this.
Can go with that. And while you do that, I just wanted to say, I also wanted to make the connection about that. What you're saying is, what each of these steps is doing. It's also connecting people. So,
Isn't that so important?
It's literally building community. It's connecting people. Right. It's building community. Right. It's making it possible for communities to see they can create their own sustenance.
Correct.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
So
let's look at this.
I just spent 4 days at the sister's upscale retirement home and 8 meals in the dining hall. The amount of plastic and styrofoam used was appalling, and even my 83-year-old sister was upset by it. Multiply this by all the nursing homes, hospitals, and schools that use this, and it is mind-boggling. If we're honest with ourselves, we know little of it is actually recycled. The legislatures are only vote. I saw no styrofoam or plastic a week of eating out and getting takeout in California last year. Your thoughts regarding recycling plastics and reuse plastics?
Oh my gosh! You clearly, your audience is really you've been all learning a lot from each other, Marilyn. So let me say that's a really great comment. Plastic and styrofoam is a huge problem. My guess is, Marilyn, you guys have already covered that on this program. And again, back to the whole world. It's a problem when you make it, and the chemicals that people are exposed to in the manufacturing of the plastics. It's a problem, depending on how you're using plastic. Please, everybody, never cook or microwave in plastic. Even if it says microwave safe, it's not. Always use glass, because plastics can leach from the containers. We're back to the kitchen again, right? Chemicals from the plastics can leach into your food if you either cook like in the microwave or you store food in plastic containers. So, for example, like especially something a little bit acidic, like a tomato sauce, maybe could leach plastics from tomatoes. If your plastics have turned color, that's a good example that's you don't want that. And and again, that doesn't have to be expensive. If you can save your glass jars. It's not like you have to go out and buy expensive plastic or expensive glass things. So again, starting at home. So the best way to deal with plastic and styrofoam is to not use it. And there's a lot when guess what? When we're growing our own food in our garden, guess what? We've made food miles zero, and we're helping the world that way. We've made plastic zero, and we're helping the world that way. So amazing. And then of course, people know the very sad story about how plastics end up, even when you're careful, like you're trying to recycle or you're trying to get things properly into the trash, they can still end up, the way the trash is managed, sometimes it can end up in our rivers and in our oceans and cause all kinds of problems. So 100%. Best thing is thinking of starting again and back at home, and the intentionality. What's the best way to reduce plastics? When it comes to how do we get corporate, what I love about this question, because it's hitting on all of those different levels. So family, now it's hitting on corporations, demanding from your corporations that they cut out those plastics. You don't want to see them. Get rid of that excess packaging. So that's another demand we can make with our economic power. I'm a customer of yours. I do not want to see this plastic on this. You don't need to put, you don't need to put a product in cardboard and then in plastic and then another layer of cardboard and then another layer of plastic. We do not need this. And so stop that waste. And then there are times when the community has to come together to change policy. We haven't talked so much about that because we've been focusing on the economic levers and what we can do. But policy is another way. When you build community, you can start making these changes. So for example, in California, a lot of that started in community. It's not that they woke up one morning and they got the state legislature to pass the no plastic rule, that started community by community. And some of the cities in California also do community composting. You know, they will literally pick up and compost for you. But if you kind of peel back the clock and you go back in time, that started by groups of people, maybe people who work together on a community garden, saying, we don't want this waste, we want it composted, we don't want plastic. What if we have satisfied ourselves, our own sustenance, that our own sustenance doesn't depend on plastic, so the community sustenance doesn't depend on it either. So then they get laws passed in their community, because that's sometimes an easier place to start. And then it goes community to community, and then eventually the statewide folks follow the lead. I happen to live in Washington, D.C., and I am so fortunate. You know, I literally live 3 blocks from a community garden. You know, I live in an apartment. There's not a garden I can have in my apartment. We live 3 blocks from a community garden. The community garden does the composting for the whole neighborhood, so the whole neighborhood can bring their compost there. And here in D.C., you know, we passed a, it took, oh my gosh, I think it took, I want to encourage people that it can be done, and it takes persistence, but it took many years to get what we did first was, the plastic bags. We got those banned. We actually didn't ban them. We did something else. We said, you know what, it's going to cost you 5 cents if you want one. Guess what? Overnight, people figured out they could bring their own bag to the store. If they were going to save, you know, if they're doing shopping for their family and they were going to save 60 cents, I mean, overnight, I kid you not, you know, and people said, oh, it's not fair to charge people for, well, overnight. And then when we did the poll 1 year later, everybody was saying, yeah, we like this. We like saving money when we go to the grocery store. We like bringing our own bags. Hey, they're sturdier anyways. And, you know, we like not having a rat's nest of plastic bags in the house. So even though some people before it went in kind of resisted it, and they said, oh yeah, this isn't fair because some people don't have a dime to spend. That's true. But guess what? We all figured out how to bring a bag to the store and save those dimes. And a year, like I said, a year later, people liked it. So then with that success, then then our community went on to say, oh, okay, well, what about that styrofoam? Nah, we don't need the styrofoam either. So, you know, it's step by step. It's not overnight, but that's what happens when you get communities collaborating. You find solutions that in fact work for everybody. And I have to admit, I really feel for your member of your audience that wrote in, because hospitals and care facilities are one of the hardest places, because they have to follow, you know, health regulations. And so, you know what, if we could get plastics out of other daily use, then where we need them, we can have them. If we need them for health, you know, if somebody needs to put on those plastic gloves to protect themselves and to take care of people, then that's where we want it. But we don't want it for the unnecessary use.
That's correct.
Even
that's correct.
Right, you know, and even in the facilities that your listener spoke of, you know, again, back to the kitchens, could the kitchen reduce the waste? Because that's not a situation where you need the plastic to protect somebody. That's a situation like any kitchen where, you know what, they could buy locally and not use all that plastic. So that's, oh, and P.S., one of the things, going back to the California example, since your member brought it up, one of the really interesting things they found out in California was they said, yep, we're growing a lot more of our food locally. I mean, even in the San Francisco and Oakland areas where, you know, there's not a lot of there's no farms, and there, you know, well, you know, but on the other side of Oakland, there is a lot of farmland. So they started to like, how do we make this sort of this urban area in Oakland that was otherwise considered a food desert? How do we make partnerships with the farms just on the other side of the city from us? So they started to do that, and they sort of said, well, how do we start getting this really good food into schools and hospitals? And you know what they discovered? They discovered that a lot of hospitals and a lot of schools no longer have kitchens. So they can't even do they couldn't even, like, for example, the squashes, the beautiful acorn squashes that were being grown, you know, just 3 miles away, the schools couldn't use them. So what they did is the whole community got together and they created something in Oakland called a pre-prep kitchen. So now they can purchase from the local farmers. It can come into the kitchen. It's a worker-owned facility. It creates jobs for the frontline communities in Oakland. And they then prepare the food so that the schools and the hospitals who no longer have kitchens can sell the local healthy food. So when communities get together, that power of what can start as a small idea, I'm going to plant a garden in my front yard, and then you start connecting with your neighbors, and pretty soon ideas like this come up. So I just really want to recognize these really great questions and how deeply people are thinking and show some examples of what it can lead to in communities. It's extraordinary. I'm so happy.
You answered my question that I was anticipating. The job creation aspect of it. The individual, the community, healthy environment, but also it creates jobs. Now you got an economic solution.
That's the economic part.
Because I often wonder, like, for example, artificial intelligence tends to be focused on eliminating retail service jobs. One of the prime examples, like self-checkout. Where are these people going? You're removing the job, but you're not removing the people. The people are still here. So where are they going? We have to create jobs for these people who are being eliminated in retail. So now I'm thinking, job creation. We can create healthy jobs. We can create jobs that have healthy impact. If we're very intentional, strategic about the approach to community garden, to local farms, and farmers, to the clean water. Someone has to do the work.
Right.
Even if it's feeding yourself, you're in that community garden, growing the food to feed yourself and your family. That's creating a job. Not even further, maybe even creating a business.
That's right. And that's what I love about your work, because that's the kind of thing that you're always thinking about. And so what I've seen some communities do that really inspires me is that they say, what are the things that we buy in this community? And could we make that here and create local businesses and local jobs? So we've been on the theme of gardens and growing things and all the health and sustenance that brings. So let me give you an example. I was inspired by a community that they did this little inventory, like, what are the things that people are buying that are coming from someplace else? And one of the things they came up with was, everybody's buying chicken soup. And the local hospital, the local school, they buy a lot of chicken, whether they make, chicken nuggets or chicken soup or whatever. What's the common denominator here? Chickens. We could start a business here raising chickens, and we could bring in a little, maybe we're just making eggs. Maybe at first, the first thing we're doing is eggs. Eggs was also a common denominator. So, and so that community started a couple of chicken and egg businesses in the community, creates jobs, selling into the community either the eggs or the chickens. Again, in some cases you also have to think about processing, but guess what? That creates jobs too, especially again like the Oakland example where they made a worker-owned job, a worker-owned business. So that you'd have not only jobs, you'd have good paying jobs that were the local people are in charge of. So, to really kind of think about in the different communities of people who are listening today, what is it that people are buying? I'll give another example. This was actually a community outside of Buffalo, New York. One of the things they identified was that one of the things that people buy a lot of is uniforms. You need a uniform at the healthcare center. You need a uniform. When you start thinking about all the different uniforms that people buy, and they're all coming from somewhere else with lots of miles and lots of plastic. They actually started a business to make uniforms, and they got the money by getting the companies that buy the uniforms to commit in advance so that they could get the money to set up the business. So, I mean, I just thought I was so inspired by that, because how inventive that is to realize, oh, one of the things we're spending a lot of money on is uniforms in this community. What if we made some of them ourselves? So and again, starting with community gardens, starting with an egg business. These are all things that communities can do. These are all, maybe there's a small pre-prep business. The one in Oakland is pretty big, actually, but doesn't have to be big. It can be sized for the community that you're there. And what are those? Those are more jobs. And in some ways, maybe they're more inspiring jobs than working retail in a grocery store. I'm part of feeding my community. I'm part of the sustenance of my community. Might be something that people really get into.
I am thinking more and more about local ecosystems. And that's what I'm hearing. Those two great examples you just gave. It's about local ecosystems. And part of the work that I'm doing is going community by community with the Gullah Geechee community and talking to them about the Gullah Geechee trade. But I'm also talking to them about ecosystems.
I love it.
We need the local storytelling. We need the local logic. We need the local risk. We need the local professional services to provide services to all those the local entertainment. Working together create local ecosystems, not only for local folks to come visit and spend their money. But to do all that, if we're going to have the story tells the indigenous story. The restaurant, you want local land, you want healthy land and water. You need people to take care of that, supply the eggs, etc. So it's concentrated local, but it's global.
Right.
And yes, it does impact the environment, but it forces all of us to think through the challenges and the solution. This is the solution, but I got to think it through, not only from that local scale, but to that global scale too. And then how do we address environmental impact step by step?
Right. I love that ecosystems thinking. And it gave me more ideas. And I guess, I've got chickens on my mind because we've been talking about food and gardens and chickens. But I'll give you another example of that, of the chickens. So there was a community outside of, this is actually in Amsterdam. So learning from other people in other places. And they wanted to put together a community chicken. And they were like, but we're on the outskirts of a city and we don't have much access to, we can't grow our own chicken feed. So that means we're going to have to buy chicken feed. Oh, that causes, that's more food miles, all this kind of stuff. And besides, then it's not local. What can we do locally? Mm-hmm. And they were trying to think about, well, how do we reduce the amount of chicken feed? Maybe we can grow a little bit. And they finally said, okay, no, we're going to do the ultimate challenge. How do we raise chickens without chicken feed, without having to buy any chicken feed whatsoever, any? And then, so that forced them to get real creative and then to create some more of that local ecosystem you're talking about. So they said, the way we could do it is we could buy, we have bakeries in this community. We have, a local brewery in this community. What if we bought from the bakery the flour or the leftovers that would otherwise go to waste, that would otherwise be put out to trash? We feed that to the chickens. We buy the distillery grains that are left over after we do the local brewing. We feed that to the chickens. What are we doing now? Now in this business, we have zero cost we're not buying chicken feed. So we've lowered our costs. What we're doing instead, we're creating jobs. What they do is they put people on those little electric scooters and they go to the bakery and they pick up so now we've created jobs. And now we've got chickens. Ooh, that means if we've got chickens, we've got chicken manure. What are we doing with that chicken manure? We're sharing it with the local community garden. That's right. You're creating that ecosystem, and again, you're keeping the money in the community. You're creating new jobs. I really liked your point about the support ecosystem. So all of these businesses, well, what do they need? They need an accountant. So all of a sudden you've got an accountant who has more business opportunities, and maybe they can hire another person. What else do they need? Oh, they need somebody to
a lawyer.
Lawyer. They need a lawyer. They need somebody to do the social media. You got to do social media these days. You got to say, hey, we've got the fresh eggs. We're going to open at 8:00. We've got 6 dozen eggs. Whoever's first come, first serve. Put that out on social media. So you need somebody to do the social media. So all of these things, create, again, with your ecosystem approach, that ecosystem of support as well, that also creates local jobs. And I also love what you said about the storytelling, because if you can help people connect to that, as that accountant, or as that social media person, I'm not only providing my expertise and services and helping these businesses, which is a good thing, period, full stop. But look, what am I doing? If the person is there to tell the story, you're telling the story of how, look, we're creating this local resiliency, this local sufficiency, this local sustenance.
I am going to invite you back. This has been fascinating. So fascinating. An hour went by like that.
Oh my gosh. Has it already been an hour? Oh my goodness.
It has been,
you're right.
Almost an hour and 2 minutes.
Well, I'm
sit and talk to you all day long because I love this stuff.
Me too. And it reminds me of that first conversation we had, and why I was so excited to see you again today, because it was like, we were doing this before, like
yeah. And it's not only we're talking about it, we're actually putting steps in action. That's what I love about it. I can talk about it. I can do my imagination. And then put the work in to make things happen. But that's what makes it so exciting and fascinating for me. Just listening to you and going through my head. Okay, look at that and break it down even further. I can look at that. And see. I know a bakery in town. I can't do everything. My kids finding the people to do it. Because I love the ideas and I love handing them off. And that's a whole nother conversation. And getting other people to pick it up and run with it. And understand that not only the individual impact, but community, local community, and then global impact. That's the missing key that I kind of understand mostly why, but I'm looking for partners to help me present the solutions to the why. But we're gonna have to say that.
All right. Well, anytime, Marilyn, because I learned so much from you, and one of the important things in all of this is what you do. So many of the important things in all of this: the storytelling, the bringing of ideas, the connecting people to each other and to ideas. That's part of the. That's a really important part of the ecosystem, and. Wow.
I totally get it. I really do. Yeah. I get it. I really get it. But I'm going to let you have the last word. For this show. And I'm listening as an individual. What is the one thing that you would tell us to get us started? What is it that you want us to know as an individual to get us started on this path?
So what I would recommend is that having listened to this program today, between all of Marilyn's ideas and some of the stories I was telling, if you got one new idea, think about how to start that in your own life, in your own family. Do that one thing, because this isn't about doing everything all at once. I mean, a complete makeover is a lot of work and usually doesn't work. Start with one thing. Bring it into your life, make it as natural as breathing, and then go to the next thing. Or let that experience tell you what the next thing might want to be, So, and I really do invite people to really do something like start in your kitchen. How can you get rid of one toxic chemical and learn how to make a really great cleaner that smells good and does the same good job, and doesn't harm your family. Or start in your garden, or start a garden. You know, there's and it doesn't have to be a huge garden. Start a small garden. You know, grow herbs, or you could even grow herbs on your windowsill that spice up your food, and you go, oh, that tastes good. What if I were to grow? I made a tomato sauce, and I put those spices in, and it tasted so good. What if I grew the tomatoes? Those tomatoes would taste so much more amazing, and then I'd have these amazing tomatoes and these amazing spices. So you know, just allow, start with one thing and follow your heart. That's what I would say. And
that was a perfect answer.
That was a perfect answer.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for this wonderful discussion. Yeah.
Thank you for joining me. I apologize once again. It's my audio. I don't know what happened. Computers, but I know you got the answers. The problem was the answer.
I had no trouble hearing you, so I hope that's the same for everybody else listening as well.
I hope so too, that you guys heard this conversation, because it was a fascinating conversation. Alisa, thank you for joining us. The door is open for you to come back. We're going to talk some more, because we did cover some topics, but in the environment and tying it to marketplace, the opportunities are vast. It really is. I really is. I want you to come on back and share some more with us.
Well, thank you. I just so enjoyed this conversation. Marilyn, you are a path breaker and a future maker. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll let you go, and we'll be talking to you later. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of your day. So y'all, thank you. And we had a little audio problems, but that's okay. I think the message got across. My name is Marilyn Hemingway, and today's show was The Environment and Energy, sponsored by the United States Energy Foundation through a generous grant brought to the Gullah Geechee Chamber Foundation. Every second Wednesday, we talk about environment and energy, and we had Miss Alisa Gravitz join us from Green America. I encourage you to go to their website and learn so much more. It's a wonderful website with wonderful resources, and I want you to just go to that website and start your path. As she said, start with one thing. Start with one thing. That's how I started. And that's how so many of us get started. Start with one change, and you can make a difference, and then grow from there, scale up from there. I want to invite everybody this Sunday at 4:00. We're going to be talking about Juneteenth, because Juneteenth, most people are celebrating it on Saturday, June 18th. And we are having a huge program here in Georgetown for Juneteenth, and I'm inviting everybody out to come and enjoy it. But not only in Georgia are we doing Juneteenth, but across the coast of South Carolina, all of South Carolina, there are different Juneteenth programs happening. And I'm just inviting you out to the one in Georgetown, Saturday, June 18th, starting with a parade hosted by the Howard High Alumni Association. The parade starts at 11 a.m. coming down Merriman Road. 12 p.m. there will be a press conference and ribbon cutting opening the Family Festival. And at 12:30 to 10 p.m., the Juneteenth Family Festival will be happening at Steelworker Square at the corners of Gilbert, Hazard, and Kaminsky Streets. And as you see, we have a number of sponsors: the Gullah Geechee Chamber of Commerce, Zaje Ventures, Georgetown, South Carolina NAACP branch, Liberty Steel, the South Carolina AFL-CIO, Georgetown County Democratic Party, and Common Ground. We're going to have gospel music. We're going to have bounce castles. We're going to have food truck vendors, craft vendors. We're going to have a kids tent with games, and we're going to have a board game tent for the adults. With board games, Uno, Spades. Y'all come on out and have fun. We're going to have different games. And y'all, if you want to be a vendor, contact me, Marilyn Hemingway, at marilyn@GullahGeecheeChamber.org or 843-318-8644. But come on out to Juneteenth and all the Juneteenths around you, because that's a celebration of emancipation. And we are announcing other programs also. Excited to have everyone here. And thank you to Alisa Gravitz once again with Green America for joining us today. Fascinating conversation. I love these type of conversations, folks. I learned a lot, and I hope you learned a lot too. Once again, this is Marilyn Hemingway, and we'll see you Sunday at 4:00 when we talk about Juneteenth, not only in Georgetown, but the state of South Carolina and other surrounding communities. We'll see everyone later and enjoy the rest of your day.